Hey folks, if you recall, the last thing we did was create a clean audio track for our service. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to start working in KdenLive. But rather than just open a new KdenLive project, I want to use the example project that I created and put on the Dropbox. So we're going to grab this example project here and we're going to pull it over here and make a copy. This is almost identical to a new KdenLive project. There's only one small difference. That just put the overlay filter in here. So when we open this up, we can have a closer look at what KdenLive looks like. So I'm just going to give you a quick tutorial of the space. Everything, this is the projects bin. Everything in here are all the clips and images and pictures and videos and audio tracks for your project. There's a section over here that's all about all of the filters and things and some transforms happening over here. Ignore these two for now and just focus on this one over here, which is this is your project monitor. So anything that you're trying to do will show up in the project monitor. This is what it'll look like. The lower half of the screen is really where you're going to do most of your work. So there are tracks here. This the from left to right indicates time, and you can actually see a time code here. The time code is in hours, minutes, seconds, and frames. And the frames go up to 30 frames. It depends on how you have the KdenLive set up. We have it for 30 frames a second. So that's this time code. And then going up and down here, you have different, this is a video track. This is your video 1, and audio 1, audio 2, and audio 3. So you'll see how these come into play later when we start adding things to our project. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to pull up our project folder here, and we're going to add the raw MP4 video. So we'll just pull that right in. We're also going to add the cleaned up audio. We can pull that in. Oh, excuse me. Before I pull in the cleaned up audio, this is something that happens quite often. It thinks I want to import a clip, and that's the video clip, and an image, and you just hit cancel here and it will just upload the video itself. There'll be no image associated with it. And the other thing you want to do, of course, is pull in the audio. So we'll pull in the MP3, and that's an audio file. That's the one we made the last time. And the last thing we're going to do is pull up the images, and we're not going to use all the images here. I'm only going to use 3 of them because this is going to be an abbreviated service, and we're not even going to, the location of the images isn't really even going to make sense. It's just going to try to show you the techniques here. So now that we have that taken care of, and all of the files, all of the files that we're going to use in the project, I'm going to go ahead and save. So just to give you a hint, when I click the mouse or hold down one of the keys on the keyboard, when I hold down one of the keys on the keyboard or click the mouse, like Control S, you'll see an indicator in the on the top right hand corner of the screen. This is a way for you guys to keep track of all of the modifier keys that I'm using to move around, and there are quite a few, and I'll try to say what they are as we go, but I may miss some, and if I do, those modifier keys will show up in that upper right hand corner. So moving right along, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to pull in the video. This is the video that Young Jay made, and I'm going to pull it into video track 1, audio track 1, and they're stuck together because there's video and audio together. And the audio here, remember, is the audio that's a little bit noisy from room noise. We are also going to pull in the audio track and drop that audio track. And it looks exactly the same. This bottom one here, we're going to pull it into audio 2. The bottom one is just a little bit less noisy than the top one. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to try to align these audio tracks. And I'm going to show you the first quick key. So you hold down the control key, and then you use the wheel mouse, and you can see the symbol on the top there indicates the wheel mouse is, I'm pushing it forward. If the symbol changes to where the red is on the bottom of the wheel, I'm moving it back. And when I move the wheel back, it zooms out of the project, and you'll see the time code change, and you'll also see the length of the project change. So I'm now zooming in, and at the bottom of the screen here, this is actually going to be quite important. You can grab this handle and a scroll bar and move it. So now we've zoomed in, so the project is very, very large compared to the width of our screen. We can zoom out so that it's about the width of our screen. And now we can look at the whole project all together. A couple other things I want to talk about in terms of interface tips. This here is called the playhead, this vertical line. And you can move that playhead around by clicking on it and dragging. When you do, you actually scrub through the service, and you can view that. This is called scrubbing. You can view that in the project monitor. So everything, you'll see the video. You'll also hear the audio if the audio track is loud enough to hear. Let's see if we can give that a listen. I don't hear anything. Let's try over here. For some reason, our audio track isn't, because I have turns out I had the track muted. So that's another interface tip here. If you click on this button, you will mute the track. And you can see we just muted. If both tracks sound almost the same, so you really can't tell the difference. But in one case, in this case, this is the track we're going to use for the sound. And here it is playing along with and you can see it in the project monitor as well. So that's another interface tip. So let's do the best we can to align that sound. So what we're going to do is we're going to come to an abrupt change in the sound. We're going to move the playhead to an abrupt change in the sound. You can see one right here. And we're going to hold down the control key, and we're going to zoom in just to make sure the audio lines up very nicely. And you can see here, as you zoom in very close, very, very close, the width of that vertical line changes. That is now the width of a single frame of video. So there are 30 of those every second of video. So now we can move this along, and you can see very clearly that the audio track is well aligned. And in fact, this software here has some really cool properties. One of them is when you move a track, if it thinks it knows where you want it to go, it's called snap. It will snap to that, and it seems to understand that this audio needs to line up with that audio, and so that's what it's done. So now that we've aligned the audio for the track, we can check that by looking at the project monitor in a second. We can play the project, and I never mentioned this before, but you might have noticed, to play the project I hit the space bar.
Good morning. Welcome to Jonesville United Methodist Church.
And you can see that his lips are aligned with the audio, so it doesn't look weird at all, and that's important. So let's go ahead and zoom out, and let's do the next thing we wanted to do, which is I just moved that to the playhead to the beginning of the project. The next thing we want to do is we want to pull in a slide, and we can pull the slide into the track V2. That's video 2. So we've already filled video 1 with the video from the service. Now we can pull a slide in, and the slide by default comes in at 5-second long clip. So this is a 5-second long clip of that slide. And if we play it, you'll notice that it will switch from the video. Let's go ahead and hit the space bar to play it. We'll switch from the video, and then as soon as it hits that 5-second clip, it will overlay. It will basically just take over the screen for that 5 seconds and then flip back. And that's not exactly what we're looking for. If we want that to happen, let's say we want to have a title, and in the beginning of the film, we can put that clip in V1 right at the beginning, and we can have that title. And here's another interface tip for you here. If we zoom in on that, you move your mouse over the top to the top left-hand corner, you can see there's a green handle there that appears. And if you pull that handle to the right, that will effectively fade in the clip. And if you then overlap like this, and you pull that, it will effectively fade it out. Now, if you fade it out here, it does something funny, which I'll show you. So it really is very nice. That just faded it in slowly over time. Let's show that again so you can see. it's fading it in slowly over time. Instead of an abrupt change, it brings it from black and then it fades it out. But the way we have this clip set up, it faded it out to black, and then then our clip popped in. So what we want to do, if we want to have a title in the beginning, a title sequence, we pull that up there, and then when we play this clip, it will fade it in, that title, and then it will fade out the title to the video underneath. Since we don't use at the Jonesville, the pastor typically creates his own title clip, so we're gonna go ahead and remove that title clip. Move this. Whoops! I moved the video independent of the audio, so I definitely don't want to do that. So let's select them both. I just used Control-Z, by the way, to undo. And of course I didn't select it either. Select them both by holding on the Shift key. And now I can drag both tracks together, and I drag them to the beginning of the video. Now, to fade the actual video in, when I like to fade in, I like to fade in about 1 second to 1.5 seconds, depending on the emotional content of the video. Now, keeping in mind, I want you to pay attention to that time code that is appearing just below my cursor. 1.5 seconds will look like 0001, 1 second, semicolon 15, because 15 is half of 30, and there are 30 frames per second. So that will go from black to the video in 1.5 seconds, and there it's done it. So that's an example of how to fade in. And you can, by the way, you can also fade in the audio. So we can grab this audio and fade it in here. You won't notice much for this clip because the first part of the audio is actually silent. But it does prevent abrupt changes in audio. And believe it or not, abrupt changes in audio are very jarring in a video service. In fact, if you have to choose between consistency, the consistency in the audio track is more important, believe it or not, than consistency in the video track. I can't tell you why. It just happens to be the way it is. So now that we've aligned the audio and we've done some fading in of the video, let's grab one of these titles and put it into V2. I'm going to zoom out here, and I haven't mentioned this before, but this is the one piece that came in with that I saved with the project. So this composite and transform is a filter that I set up originally that helps to overlay. And you'll notice when I have it selected, you'll see a red square here in the project monitor. So if we just leave this title here, it will basically just take over the whole screen. If we pull the title over this track here, because of the way I have the filter set up, it actually puts it in the upper right hand corner, which is exactly where we want it. It's actually a little bit small. We can see where the pastor is going to be in a second. We zoom out here, we'll see where he's going to end up. I guess we won't see where he's going to end up. But that's a little bit small for this production, so I'm going to go ahead and click on this, and we'll pull that up. And there it is. And we can change the size by zooming here, by moving it around. And we can grab the middle. Now, this is tricky. You can't, most programs, you grab the edge and you pull to drag it. In this case, you've got to grab the center of the clip, and you can drag it wherever you want to go on the screen. And you can do some neat things with this. You can have it animate and move around over the course of the time that it showed up there. But I think I'm just gonna have it appear right here over the pastor when he shows up. And you can decide to have just short. You can decide to have this composite and transform filter here. And you can make copies of it all the way along, or you can use the same one, and this is nice to be able to do. You can use the same one for putting in a second clip. So we'll put this second clip in here. Let's here's another interface tip. If you mouse over the edge of a clip, or even the edge of our transform, which we've done a couple of times, or the edge of any of these tracks, it does different things. So let me go over this. If you mouse over the edge of the track and I pull that in, it crops the track. It doesn't try to scale the video or the audio. It just simply crops the track. And you can use that for a lot of useful things. If you mouse over a clip like this and you drag it, it actually extends the length of that clip. Since it's just a picture, we'll just add more frames of that picture. And we're going to pull this clip right up next to it. And so when you'll see the transition here, if you look in the upper right hand corner, it'll transition from one slide to the next slide, and it's an abrupt transition. But maybe you want that slide to fade out. And here's another interface trick. As soon as I finish this fade out, so I'm going to fade this out, and I'm going to also fade it in, so we can have a nice fade in and fade out. That's a nice transition. It keeps it from being too abrupt, and we can watch that happen. And then I'll show you another interface trick. So you see it fades in nice and slow. It runs for the length of time that it had. It's a little bit more than 5 seconds because I dragged that clip. And then it transitions abruptly, and then it fades out again. And there you have it. So I'm using the space bar to start and stop the play of the video. And I also want to go over a couple of, remember I told you if you hold down the control key and you use the wheel mouse, it zooms in and out. If you're not holding the control key and you use the wheel mouse, it moves the project left and right. So it's not zooming in this case, it's just moving things left and right, which is really nice. So the last thing we're going to do is we're going to pull in the last clip, and we'll drop it over here, and I'll show you how to fade out the whole, whoops. We'll just stick it right here at the end. And we can fade that last clip. Well, let's stick it here. We'll do another fade in and fade out. And then we'll fade out the whole project. So we don't have to watch the whole thing while we're editing.
I also heard that online giving registration increased from 38.
So you can use this same transition filter along the whole length of it. If you don't want to use the whole same transition filter because let's say the pastor gets in the way, or you want to be able to move that, you can actually copy this. I'm going to say I'm going to click on it, Control C, Control V, copies it. And now it's a separate transform, and I can make adjustments to this independent of the first one. So if I decide to change the location of these two slides, I can. If I decide to change the location of this slide, I can just simply by dragging it, and then let's say move it here over the pastor because this is really important, or because he wanted it over his face. And I can do a nice fade in here as well, and an equally nice fade out. I like to use the fader. I use this as a transition over some of the more sophisticated transitions like wipe and twirl, and some of them can be a little bit distracting from the content. So I like to use these fade in and fade out transitions liberally. And you can see here, the red box just indicates that you have the filter selected. So if I don't have the filter selected, it won't show the red box. And then in a second, you'll see that it will fade out. And I'm going to go ahead and shorten this whole clip. Remember I told you if you drag the clip, it will crop the clip. So we'll just go ahead and drag this whole thing to shorten it. Let's end it at a place let's end it at a place that makes sense, at a pause in his speech. So we'll listen to it carefully, and then we'll use the space bar when he pauses speaking. Oops. Let's go back and try again here. I'm going to turn up the audio a little bit so I can hear. There, that's a nice pause. So what we can do here is we can zoom in. We can say, okay, he paused speaking there, so I can drag the edge of the video, and when I do that, it snaps to the playhead because it thinks that's where I want to put it, and it turns out it's right. And I'm going to go ahead and fade out. Oops. I'm going to go ahead and fade out the video over the course of a couple seconds. And I'm also going to fade out the audio. Now, remember I said the audio is more important to have consistency in the audio. So we're gonna leave the audio run a little bit long, and we're gonna fade it out too. But we're gonna fade it out a little bit behind. And so what that will do is it will have the audio still playing a little bit, even though there's some black frames, and you'll see what that looks and sounds like. It's a nice way to end a video, to have just a little bit of audio playing past the video. Although it's 100% up to you and how you choose to do it. So now that we have composited this video, we've added a couple of overlays, and we've learned about applying lining up the audio. The next thing we're going to learn how to do is render. So we'll go ahead and up here there's a render button. We can go ahead and click on that render button, and you can see that it brings up the render dialog box. And one of the things you're going to want to remember is you're going to want to name your video, and you're going to want to, and this is a little bit tricky, it gives you basically two ways to do the same thing. So I'm putting this in JUMC service, example service, which is the place, and I'm going to say example service outputs, just so I know that it's the output. And this is important because when you go to upload it to Facebook, if it doesn't say output, then I won't upload it to Facebook. I once accidentally uploaded the input video, and that didn't go well. So if you're not used to using file paths like this, you can I'm going to copy that. You can use this more common interface, and you'll see I put it in JUMC services, example service, and I just put it right in here. I'm going to give it that file name that I gave it earlier, example service output, and save. And it actually builds that file name for you. So if you're not used to writing file names yourself, you can do so by using this dialog here. Remember, you want it to be an MP4. You want the quality to be pretty good, but not 100%. This will dramatically change the amount of time it takes to render, and also the size of the video. So you're going to go ahead and render to file here, and when you do this, it will render that MP4 to this file, and you can see it will take about 2 minutes to do so. I'm gonna go ahead and stop recording here, and we can, in the next tutorial, we'll look at that video, make sure that it looks good, and then we'll upload it to Facebook.